I'm going to talk about our approach to planning for the future at this moment. But before we turn to the future, I want to take a quick look back and note that we are approaching this crisis from a strong position as possible, because 2019 was really a fantastic year at the Playhouse. In 2019, we welcomed nearly 75,000 visitors to the Playhouse. We served over 13,000 visitors in Real Tools. We opened our first new permanent exhibit, Fossils Rock. We launched Prescription for Play and other health-related programming. Prescription for Play is a partnership with OSF. And we exceeded our projected revenue by over $30,000. 2019 was a year in which we saw incredibly generous support and enthusiasm. It was made possible by you and all of our amazing supporters. And it was a year really in which we turned from figuring out what it takes to responsibly run the Playhouse as a community resource to expanding our definition of what type of resource we can be. So again, I can't say thank you enough. So now it's 2020 and wow. So how do you plan for the unknown in the midst of a crisis? Today, I want to share 4 questions that we're asking ourselves and trying to answer to try to chart a course forward. And I'm quickly sharing the questions here, and then I'm going to go through them one by one and share our initial responses to these questions. So our questions are, how will we know when it's safe to reopen? While our space is closed, how can we continue to help children become explorers and creators of the world? How do we financially steward the Playhouse through this moment? And what new opportunities are presented at this moment, and how do we leverage them to make our communities stronger? So a little context for the answers that you're about to hear. Right now, almost all the Playhouse staff is furloughed or laid off. The goal is to save money right now, especially while there are opportunities for unemployed staff to receive financial compensation through unemployment, and to retain, our goal is to retain jobs in the long term. But right now, the staff is me, Mary Kate, who's on this call, and Claire, who's on this call or this meeting. 2 amazing staff members who have paid funded internships that are at least partially supported by our wonderful funders, in this case, Bradley University and the Monticello College Foundation. So just as you come up with ideas to share with us, know that right now we are a very small but mighty team. So our first question is, how will we know when it is safe to reopen? And this is a big one, and I don't think we are going to have a real answer for a while. At a minimum, we know we need declining new cases, as well as testing and contact tracing to begin reopening businesses. And some businesses will be able to open more quickly than others. I'm sure you all know that the government has released a phased plan for reopening, and certainly a number of think tanks and nonprofits have other versions of phased plans for reopening. But the first phase calls for ongoing physical distance and socializing in groups of less than 10. And phase 2 calls for ongoing physical distance and socializing in groups less than 50. Kids are terrible at social distancing, and they touch everything. I've been following what's happening in other museums, and in Hong Kong, the Children's Museum tried reopening by selling timed tickets and only allowing up to 50 people at a time. They found that timed tickets did not sell very well, so they would be preparing full staff for maybe 12 visitors. And more generally, as Hong Kong reopened things, cases began to spike again. I'm attending a webinar on Thursday that will share more data from what's happening in Asia as museums try to reopen. And I'm in ongoing conversations with children's museum directors led by the Association of Children's Museums about what it will take to reopen. But at this point, I think we can predict that it will be a while before we reopen, that we are in that last phase of reopening. There is a corollary question: what operational changes will we need to make to keep our community safe? And possible changes that we are looking at include lower capacity, having cleaning products that we can give out at the door so families can clean exhibit areas before and after using them, doing health checks as people arrive, perhaps opening in shifts so we can close midday and do a thorough cleaning. We continue to learn from fellow museums as well as from other businesses. And I'm just noticing that I cannot see the chat box while I'm sharing my screen. So I'm going to take a moment and stop this share to see if there's any questions in the chat box, to see if anyone has questions about this. And nobody does, so I'm going to keep going. And again, if you have questions as I go, please do feel free to share them. So the next question is, while our space is closed, how can we continue to help children become explorers and creators of the world? This is our mission, and it's not our mission only because we have a fabulous exhibit space in which children can be explorers and creators of the world. It is our mission because we think it is really, really important for all children to have these opportunities, some of which relate to physical spaces, some of which relate to simply approaches to helping children do the work that children do, which is play. It's really, there are two reasons that I want to share to emphasize why play is so essential for children. The first is that it is essential for children's healthy development. The American Academy of Pediatrics noted in their 2018 report, play is not frivolous. It enhances brain structure and function and promotes executive function, which allows us to pursue goals and ignore distractions. Play is how kids learn to solve problems, collaborate, think creatively, have social skills, and how to be curious. Second, through our philosophy of open-ended play and our emphasis on activities in which kids become makers, we're fostering next-generation problem solvers who will fundamentally change our community and our world. And we are in a moment right now that really highlights the importance of problem-solving skills and the ability to be innovative and actually put plans into action. Today, adults are innovating and putting plans into action, but in 20 years, when the next crisis arises, it's today's children who will be the ones tackling whatever new challenges are thrown their way. At the Playhouse, we're committed to helping children understand that problems are solved by people like them and giving them tools and practice in identifying and solving problems. There are pages on our website dedicated to both of these priorities, play as a health initiative and fostering next generation problem solvers. So the question is, how do we do this right now with limited staff and no facility? So I'm just sharing a little bit of a list right now of what we're doing. We started by curating play-based, open-ended activities, which were designed by other museums and other organizations. Some of them had been around for a while on the internet, but identifying things that we think help kids and families work towards our mission. More recently, we launched the Playhouse Times, which is a newspaper with kid writers, and one of them, Cecilia Davis, we just promoted to editor. We just launched last week our first virtual program, Storytime at the Playhouse, which is part of our multicultural Storytime series. So Dr. Seth Katz from Bradley read a story about Passover, and this Friday at 10 a.m. You can listen to Aisha Bassett teach us about Ramadan through Storytime. We'll be launching these every week, and they are recorded, so they're on our YouTube channel as well as Facebook and our website. In the future, near future, look for Be Anything Career Explorations that will be launched. We have a panel coming up this Thursday at 10 that will be live on Zoom, where kids can meet 5 professionals and ask them questions. We're launching it this Thursday because ironically it is Take Your Child to Work Day. So I know all of you are doing that right now, taking your child to work. And then that'll be followed by weekly videos which feature different career professionals, and they will engage kids in activities related to their professions. At the beginning of May, we'll be launching our Summer Maker program, which is an ongoing program at the Playhouse that we have just moved to a virtual platform. And we are also working on parent resources. So overall, we're focusing on a couple of things. One is not reinventing the wheel. Where good programming exists, we want to find it and share it rather than recreate it. Bringing community together and helping people feel less isolated. Our newspaper is one way that we're doing that. Encouraging making an open-ended play, and offering parents resources that makes all of this a little easier for them. I think the most difficult positions to be in right now are to be isolated with no one else around, or to be at home with young children. And at the Playhouse, we can make life a little easier for this second group. And I just want to take a minute to thank the supporters who are making these initiatives possible. Thanks to the Barton Family Foundation for sponsoring Storytime, our Be Anything supporters, including Just Kids Dentistry, SEFQ, and RLI and Communication Junction, and PNC Grow Up Great for supporting the development of parent resources, which we hope to launch in May. One of the other groups to thank for this virtual programming is our volunteers. It would not be possible without volunteers. So a huge thanks to our Storytime readers, our career panelists and presenters, and everyone else who's pitching in to create these resources. And if anyone who is here today has interest in any way participating in that, please do contact me later and let me know. And thank you again to everyone who is part of that. So let me check the chat again. See if there's any questions. Nope. All right, I'm just going to go through the next two and then see if anyone has any questions. So the next question is, how do we financially steward the Playhouse through this moment? Mostly, this question is an opportunity to emphasize that the Playhouse is a facility of the Peoria Park District, which is dealing with financial challenges across everything that we do, without access to a lot of resources that are available to independent businesses and nonprofits. Shout out to Emily Cahill, who's worked diligently over the past few years to manage our financial resources. And the work that she's been doing over the past few years has certainly gotten us to a better starting place to address this crisis than we would have been in without that work. At the Playhouse level, had we not furloughed selected staff, we would be looking at a deficit of about $100,000 over the next 5 months. So furloughs help, and that $100,000 is already assuming we don't have most of our part-time staff. Furloughs help, but we can't make cuts to utilities or ongoing contracts. So we are really thinking about revenue production. So for revenue, we're focused on encouraging members to renew. People can choose to freeze their memberships while we're closed, or they can keep their memberships active as a form of donation. Normally, membership revenue is over 1/4 of our budget, our revenue budget, so keeping our membership numbers up is an enormous benefit to us. We've also received some really amazing donations from supporters, and I was so thrilled yesterday we received a small donation from a past intern, a Bradley student who worked with us in 2016 as our first Fossils Rock intern and helped create that exhibit. So that was really touching. So we are so grateful to people who continue to donate to us at this moment. We're also looking at program or summer camp revenue with the assumption that anything that we do needs to be virtual, which is a good transition to my fourth and final question, which is, what new opportunities are presented at this moment and how do we leverage them to make our communities stronger? So there's nothing like a good quarantine to make us realize how important face-to-face interactions are. And it's possible that when all this is over, we will never, ever want to use computers for things that can be face-to-face again. But I actually think that it is more likely that we'll discover that there are benefits that we can find in virtual work and virtual education. Some people might not need to travel as much for work in the future because we'll realize that things can be done online. Maybe we'll replace some phone meetings with video meetings and get to see people as they talk, which deepens communication. In the educational and cultural realms, we're seeing incredible generosity and richness available as people open the doors to their collections. So people who've never seen the National Theatre in London, as I have not, can now see some of their plays online. We can see operas at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. We can listen to musical performances from around the world. The Playhouse is a small museum, and while we are very good at recognizing quality and effective education, we don't always have the capacity to create the types of experiences that others do. There's a reason why we love it when the Peoria Riverfront Museum brings exhibits like Lego or Da Vinci or Titanic to Peoria. They are not created locally, but having them here enriches our community. So an example of thinking about leveraging opportunities at this moment is that museums across the country are creating virtual camps this summer. Can we buy seats in these camps and offer children experiences created by the New Victory Theater in New York, the Great Lakes Science Center in Cleveland, the High Museum in Atlanta, all large museums with a much greater capacity than we have? Can we work with the Children's Creativity Museum in San Francisco or the Pittsburgh Children's Museum to draw on their amazing expertise in designing maker programs for children? Can we introduce children through our Be Anything videos to professionals around the world? So I just wanted to end with a faulty quote. John F. Kennedy said, "The Chinese use 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." And I love this sentiment, even though apparently John F. Kennedy was misinterpreting Chinese characters a bit. So it is inaccurate, but compelling. It's a reminder that the world is changing right now, and it's going to change more over the next year or 2 or 3. So I think the question that the Playhouse is faced with, as we're all faced with, is not only how can we survive, but how can we adapt and grow to do an even better job of strengthening Peoria by helping our children become explorers and creators of the world.